Welcome back, Poggers, to another special World's Pog State episode. I'm Atlas, joined by the entire gang, Valdes, Chronicler, and Wolf. Gentlemen, we are currently members of the best region in the world. I think it's almost undoubtable now, given the fact that we have 3/4 of the semifinals occupied by Korean teams. It's been a beautiful road. However, I think we need to start on the negative note, which is Atlas's complete failure when it comes to predicting a quarterfinals match. My pick'ems got destroyed by the power of Harmer Life Esports' ability to disappoint. It was not close, but I think that Harmer Life had a very good run, and I think starting off by talking about how proud we are of our 8th place team at the World Championship.
I think that what we really saw is what got them through the play-ins and through the group stage was the individual talent. Willer had some highlight games. Chovy and Deft go without saying. Even Vista looked really, really good. Morgan didn't look as bad as expected, which I take as a win as well.
I love how his positive praise is, he didn't look that terrible.
Yeah, I mean, like
he showed up decent.
Yeah, like coming into the tournament, people were expecting him to be like the worst top laner, like by a large margin.
Stats don't always tell the story.
Yeah,
I think a lot of that was like, oh, look at how terrible his stats are, and like he's really bad, and everybody just got on the hype train. Kind of reminds me of something, maybe a couple of people getting on the hype train of LCK not being good.
The death of the LCK was very overstated, I'd say. There was a lot of, it's over, one team region, that's the end of it. Meanwhile, at the time of this recording, 3/4 of the semis, Gen G didn't drop a game. Basically, no LCK team has dropped a game to a non-LCK team in quarters. Rest in peace, Hanwha Life, but...
Yeah.
I think it's time for a little bit of smug LCK casters, because we were all a little bit down, minus Atlas on the Hanwha Life. We were all a little bit down, like, there's no way Gen G, there's a chance they don't get out of groups. Like, T1 could be tough with EDG. T1 got out in first. Only Hanwha got out in second, still got out. Gen G got out in first. We kind of bodied Worlds. It's not even over yet, but I just want to put it out there.
I wanted to finish my point on Hanwha.
Sorry.
I'm very happy with the detour it took. But like the cool thing is that Hanwha actually tells another story about the LCK, which is like how good individually our players are. And the reason why Hanwha also didn't get any further is because as a team, they're by far the weakest team that we sent. Right, even Gen G that everyone loves to criticize, and then Gen G proceeds to just smash expectations. When they're good or bad, they get smashed, right? Like, we never know what direction it's going to be, but Hanwha just ran into the limitations of not actually being a good cohesive team and, like, having a clear plan and having multiple options in draft. So they got bodied by T1 that does have all those things while also having great individual talent. But the fact that Hanwha still did as well as they could is, like, in my eyes, still a huge overachievement. You called them, like, the 8th place team, right? But coming in, I was certain about playoffs, but I didn't know how they were going to do in groups. And they did really well.
I think saying 8th place team is, that was where they were ranked in the regular season at the end of summer. However, they are our 4th best team at Worlds, right? Like, and that should be obvious, but it is definitely a funny situation. I think that Hanwha sort of got to the end of their tether, because in their quarterfinal they were kind of a shadow of their former selves just a little bit. I think Deft had a pretty terrible showing when it came to that best of 5, which was unfortunate. But I don't really mind, right? Because they already just performed so much better than we thought they would, and they got far enough. And yes, Chovy was fantastic. There was that one game where he was behind in CS, and at 15 minutes, I think it was one game versus T1. It's the first time that he was throughout like the group stage in general, which is a pretty ludicrous achievement for such a young player. And I really hope that Hanwha stay together. Some mix-ups towards the top side of the map would be welcomed, but I really want to see how far this team can go when they can get on the same page. But let's move forward. Let's move past the obituary. Oh, actually, no. There is one more thing that we need to talk about, and that is the fact that I predicted Hanwha Life Esports. I think I was the only one on the Korean broadcast to have the Hanwha logo, which was pretty cool because I was the one that had the pleasure of the Joe Marsh tweet at the end of the the T1 victory. We'll bring it up onto your screen. if there's anyone that could let me know in the comments below on the YouTube video, what hashtag tea is supposed to mean. And the enjoy the teammate thing as well is a little bit perplexing. Like in Australia, we do drink a lot of tea. That is a thing. Not quite as much as British people, but
it'd be hard to. Yeah.
I didn't get any tea from T1. They didn't send me any. I'm a little bit offended, actually. I predicted them. Where's my tea? I predicted 3-0. So did Valdes. You get any tea?
Whoa, actually, hang on.
Me either.
Hang on, wait a second. No, there is a tea brand in Australia called T2. So maybe there's a relationship there between T1 and T2.
There's a relationship with T2 and their final standing in the LCK Summer as well.
I feel like
Oh no, that was
sorry. We had to
guys,
do it.
this isn't a conspiracies podcast. I feel like going in very deep.
Yeah, well, I just feel like maybe I'm a boomer and I don't understand what the cool hashtags are. And I messaged a little question mark because I was confused and I got nothing back.
Maybe you thought you were British.
Whoa.
That could be a thing.
That sounds insulting to British people. I'm sorry, Munchables. Oh dear. Anyway, I think that's enough. Make sure you do let me know if you do understand what was going on there. But it was, I think, a bit of just harmless banter, but it was a bit of fun, and the hashtag tea made me giggle. Anyway, let's get into our first semi-final and have a chat about how we think it's going to go. Do we want to start with the easy one or the tough one?
Let's start with the easy one, right?
Yeah.
All right, Dumb One versus T1. This one's easy, not because it's easy to predict, but because we're happy no matter what. It's just fine. Exactly.
Yeah.
I think this was brought up actually. It's last night for us tonight. However, because this is coming out just a few hours before the semi-final, it would have been a few nights ago. But I believe Azael mentioned to you when you said that there's no bad outcome. The bad outcome is not having 5 games. Yeah. And when that's the worst it can get, that's when things are doing pretty well.
Yeah, it's on multiple levels, right? Like the amount of storyline coming into this, it's a rematch of the LCK Summer Finals, which was incredible. It is Showmaker up against the greatest player of all time, and if Showmaker actually does win this Worlds, I feel like he's one of the first players, him and Canyon, where we can actually start talking about will they ever
dynasties?
Yes. Well, yeah. Will they ever It's so insane to me that even with how many people you can throw up as some of the greatest of all time, like Rookie, Uzi, when it comes to actual achievements, there's still no one that you can even remotely compare to Faker. And I feel like a Worlds win here for Damwon would at least put them in a position where in the distant future they can get there, right? Which, that's just insane to me. That says so much about how far ahead of the curve T1 and Faker still are.
And it's also interesting that we look at the semifinal match as kind of a precursor to who will probably win Worlds, right? No one is really saying that either EDG or Gen.G on the other side of the bracket will challenge either of these teams. That's the expectation, especially considering how hard it was for EDG to beat RNG on their path to the semifinals and their performances in group stage, where they dropped a few games, didn't get out of the group in first place. So the expectation is even if T1 upsets Damwon Kia, that they will just end up crushing whoever they meet in the finals. We know they've beaten Gen.G in high-stakes best-of-5 so many times over the past few years, so it is really not only a rematch of the Summer LCK Finals, but does feel like this is, in a lot of ways, the real finals for Worlds, and that's why I'm super excited about this. This is the match I'm way more excited for than watching the finals, although the finals, fingers crossed, will be good.
You were very vocal about this on social media.
It's I'm looking forward to this more than Christmas, okay?
I want to hear from Valdes, though, because we all spouted our piece when we were on the quarterfinals. But Brando, you were there for the final. What was your takeaway from the Hanwha T1 series? Because I felt like T1 played way better than they'd even shown us in the group stage. Does this mean that they're going to challenge Damwon Kia in the semis? Are we going to get those 5?
Me and Wolf had the 3-0 prediction. I think that T1 just are reaching a place where their team fighting and their individual prowess is really reaching a high level. They're kind of peaking at the right time, whereas Hanwha, I think, as Chronicler said a little bit earlier, they're still trying to figure out what they do as a team even. So it's in terms of quarterfinals, for me, that was I was expecting EDG RNG to be very close, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, what we think about EDG. But in terms of T1 making it through Hama, I think that they should have been able to crush them, at least in my opinion. And I think Damwon is extremely heavily favored in this best of 5. Like, I'm not really sure what to expect from T1, because while they were good, I think it's not exactly a huge test for them, especially the way that it was played on that day, right? Like, Hama coming in, they have some insane players. If Deft overperformed, if Chovy overperformed, we could have seen a closer best of 5, and I think some people were expecting that, but didn't go that way. And I'm still expecting Dalmon to crush them, though. That's my expectation. And Dalmon's kind of crazy too, because even with like Nuggery leaving and Khan coming in, and everybody had so much speculation about that. At the end of the day, it really feels.
I confirm.
You point at me, and I'm like,
do a little nod.
That's our resident drama expert over here. It's like, Wolf, enough drama on this one? Yes, sir.
It's just that, like we've talked about, it's really like Showmaker and Canyon. Even though Ghost and Barrel were there the last time around, it's really these two that have kind of pulled this team up by the overalls or whatever, by the belt. And
the bootstraps.
The bootstraps, that's the word. And they're really the highlight players on the team. So, like, who knows what'll happen at Damwon next year, but if they win this Worlds, and then Khan's going to retire, who knows what happens to Ghost and Barrel. Even if Canyon and Showmaker stay together, they might win again, and that's when it really becomes like, whoa, because I remember we were in spring and we were like, what could this mean if Damwon gets this dynasty going? Well, like, now we're living in the next stage, and it's really exciting.
And I really like your focus on Showmaker and Canyon, because as much credit I think Ghost and Barrel deserve, both for the performance last year, where Barrel I think was actually one of the biggest reasons why Damwon was as dominant as they were in 2020, and their kind of resurgence that we've seen, right, and that I expect to continue. I do think that there are lineups where you can take out Ghost and Barrel and replace them with another really good bot lane, and that team would still be able to do the things that they do now. But you can't take out Canyon or Showmaker, right? Like, that unit, I think, is the first mid-jungle duo since Faker and Bengi. Well, I was going to say Faker and Bengi, right? Whereas, like, they just... And that duo work differently, but it's still the way they enable each other and they play off each other gives off such an air of... How do you beat them, right? Like, I think Owner and Kana in particular have like been two of the most improved players of 2021, right? Like, if you look at their beginning of the year, well, obviously they were swapped in and out, but like, their curve has been incredible. I didn't expect Owner to completely stomp everyone that he met in groups, right? I didn't expect Owner to have the impact. Kana's use of resources has become so much better, has had multiple hard carry games. On different champions as well, right? His Gwen, his Cannon, like, his champion pool isn't an issue at all anymore. But I do agree with you, Brendan. Like, that's all amazing, and I think if Team 1 was on the other end of the bracket, I would predict them over any of the other teams. But they're up against Damwon, so I think they're gonna lose, because Damwon is just, they're too big.
Damwon has had the ability to come back in a lot of games that seemed unwinnable. Everyone remembers the Mad Lions series in Game 2, where it just looked like there's no way they lose this game. And Damwon Key were just playing with their food a lot of the early game there, and then actually suddenly tried really hard and actually ended up outclassing Mad Lions. And Mad Lions made a lot of mistakes as well in that game. But I look at T1's strengths as a really strong early game macro. We always joke about their Rift Herald control, right, and how much they
gave up a Rift Herald in that series.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Insane.
But they like to play around the early game. They like to get a tempo advantage. They get early leads. They play around top side. Owner's really good at this. He likes to play aggressive champions. You put him on the Lee Sin, you put him on the Xin Zhao. He's going to do very well there. His Poppy, in particular, recently is, I think, a very different look for him, but it's really awesome to see. But even if you get a lead against Damwon Kia, their team fighting is always better. And that's where I really look at this series. I think we're going to see a lot of games where it might look, oh, T1 could win this game, and then they lose it because Damwon is just better in the late game. That's why I think even if it's a 3-0, it will be like a 3-0 that if you just looked at the results on the bracket page, you might think, well, it must have been a one-sided series. Dom1 smashed them, but if you actually watch the games, each individual game will actually be closer and very back and forth.
Yeah, I think it's actually kind of similar to what we saw out of Gen G versus C9. Like, that series was way closer than the 3-0 would actually indicate. I think Mad Lions, like you already said, like that game number 2, that was the backbreaker, because there was so many tweets saying there's no way they can lose this now, and the amount of egg on face that happened after that, there were just not enough eggs, I don't think, on the planet. But that shows that, Dom1 aren't infallible. I think that T1 had by far the most convincing 3-0 that we saw in the quarterfinals, which is weird because I also felt like Hanwha had the worst showing out of any team that made it to the knockout stage. Personally,
the drafting was really bad.
Drafting was terrible, but also like there was not a lot of heart in it. I just felt like T1 had them mentally from the very beginning of that series, and that makes it difficult to adjudicate just where T1 are, because I do think that they had the cleanest quarterfinal out of any other team that we saw.
It's an extremely important point that you make. It's that every single match, especially in best of fives, the opponents actually matter so much in terms of determining the strength of the winner, because we see this all the time where one team smashes and it's like, oh my God, they're going to win everything. And then it's like, you'll even see it in like regular round robins, like regular season round robins, where like a team will come out super strong, and then you have to remind yourselves that, they beat this other team that we don't know too much about them yet, but they end up being like the 9th place team. So like, of course, they're going to get 2 super dominant easy wins, but then not end up as strong as they looked in those wins. And these best of fives, like that's what I was saying, and that's what you just said. Like Hanwha did not show up at all. T1 looked incredibly strong, but
yeah.
Dom1 definitely had, I think, a much stronger opponent. And I think that everybody, now we're happy because now the whole timeline, the storyline of this Worlds is LCK domination, LCK winter season, one team region, jokes all over the place, right? But at the same time, like, I think Mad Lions should have been able to potentially take a couple of games, or at least one, and, Dom1 just played much better, and it was a really rough showing, even though they were both 3-0s.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that T1 is, to me, the only team that can beat Dom1. And I think, I'd still say Dom1 were favored, and I think that the outcome should be Dom1 winning either in 3-0, 3-1 fashion. I still think that they're just not infallible, but inevitable, right? Like, we've used this word so much, but with Dom1, it's so justified, because no matter what the game state is, and I feel like the last team that really had this was SKT back in the day, where it doesn't always feel like if they're at a 10k deficit, like even with mistakes that they make, it doesn't matter how many mistakes your opponents will make. If you just make one wrong one, it's just immediately over. And I think Dom1 have that same kind of vibe. And if T1 don't beat Dom1, I think Dom1 are gonna 3-0 whoever ends up. Like that. Yeah. T1 is basically the world's final defense.
Yes.
Against Dom1, right? And I think T1 internationally is a lot more popular because of the popularity of Faker, right? The people would love to see him get to finals again, get a full world championship, and really cement his legacy. And that's why, I feel like we're very laid back discussing as well, because that's also a great storyline for us. We're also very happy with that, right? That's still.
Yeah. But I think all of us are on the same page with wanting Khan to get his title.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's a win-win scenario, I think.
I think that's the bigger win.
That's the biggest. That's the biggest possible win. Just because
100%.
we love him so much, and we have to say goodbye.
That's prio number 1. But then, if the other outcome is Faker gets a 4 of Worlds, it's worse, but it's still great.
Yeah, no. When you're saying that that's worse, that's when you know that there's some first world problems going on over here.
I want to add one thing while we're talking about the context of the series, though, because a lot of people are comparing it to the LCK finals, where we did see a 3-1. One of those games in the finals, game 4, was actually very winnable for T1. We actually could have had a 5th game. There was some misplaced realm warps, shall we say, some errors in macro. I personally think the T1 we saw in the LCK Summer Finals and the T1 we saw in Worlds, the Worlds T1 is stronger. The Worlds T1 is way better. I think Dom1 are also playing very well. The bot side of the map has improved a lot. But I think the gap between Damwon, Kia, and T1, a lot of people are just going, well, I saw the LCK Summer Final, so I don't even need to watch this series. Might be a 3-1, might be a 3-0. I do think T1 has improved a lot, and they're playing a lot less reliant on those early Herald plays. They're playing very well around mid to late game macro as well. So I do caution fans that if you're, a Damwon fan, you're just like, I don't even need to watch this because I've already seen it. I think it's going to be a much closer series, not necessarily in terms of game score, like I said before, but in terms of how the game plays out than what we saw in the Summer Finals. And I don't think Showmaker's going to be playing any weird mid picks. I don't think we're going to see any Kassadin lock
Kassadin and Renekton.
Who
else did they have?
Kassadin.
Diana? It was like all melee champions in that third game.
It was really bad.
It was a terrible draft. It was just so bad. They were just playing around.
Blind pick Kassadin, I never ever want to see again.
And he did it twice.
No, because the second time was a counter pick, and I don't think the champion is great, but in specific counter matchups, it's honestly fine. But then immediately afterwards in the draft, we're like, let's blind it, and then T1 was like, you can't do that. And
no, I didn't mean to start a retroactive discussion about the finals. We can't move on.
You're definitely right. But the one thing that was really funny for me on broadcast is you said first world problems, right? And I was like, I can be hard on Genji even though they 3-0 stomped their opponents, and I'm sitting besides Freak and Azale that just saw their team get gutted, and it's like this is not the position I think any of us expected to be in. We expected, I think, Damwon is obvious that they were going to do well. T1 was probably going to do really well. But we've really been, as LCK fans, we've been served a great year. Or great world, specifically.
It has been really interesting to me to, on this topic and on this note, see the international fans' reactions to Fnatic's loss, Rogue's loss, Cloud9, right, Team Liquid, and 100 Thieves as kind of to me, I thought they played pretty decently well. It wasn't a terrible, disappointing performance at all. In fact, I think a lot of people's expectations, even NA fans, was way lower than how they actually performed. So it's always really quite weird for me to see everybody want LCK to lose, but then when their teams lose, instead of being like, well, you did your best, they're like, oh, it was the worst worlds for us again. It's so bad. And I just always find that very odd because in Heroes of the Storm that I've cast in the past, Korea always won pretty much every time. But everyone was like, oh, we were so close. Or oh, it was a good year. I think we could improve these rosters. We can come back next year better. Whereas everyone is just like, whoa, for their League of Legends.
It's just been too many years in a row.
That's the problem.
It's like, hesitate to say this, but with us with Gen G, right? Where sometimes it's okay, you guys look amazing. You should be amazing in this final. And then they get slapped again. And it's oh my God, now's your chance. You're going to really challenge T1. Slapped again. I think that fans are kind of, sometimes they just get done with having their hopes up. So they keep it low. And then when it happens again, they're just it again, this is, I hate my life, Why does nothing change,
But EDG made it to semis. Maybe one day KT can come back too.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have that semi-final choke off, but I think we can get to that very, very soon. I guess we need to do some sort of prediction for the match that is coming up in just a few hours' time, ladies and gentlemen. I believe if you are watching this either as it releases or somehow live, but in the future if we premiere it or something like that. Not sure how we're going to go about doing it, but that's beside the point. I think we need to do some hard predictions. I'm going to start off and be as optimistic as possible and give it a 3-2 Damwon. Valdes?
I'll probably say 3-1 Damwon.
3-1 and
I've been the 3-0 guy. I was kind of sad that I didn't vote for 3-0 Gen G because that was the one scoreline that I didn't get right. Every other one was correct, but that one I said 3-1. But this one I'm going to say 3-1. I think that T1, I don't know, it's so close. It's right in between 3-1 and 3-2, and it really just depends on how well T1 can play on that day. Knowing what we know now, I'm feeling a 3-1.
I think the Canyon diff is enough to tip them over, but I think otherwise, they're almost perfectly matched.
Yeah,
it's
outside of the bottom lane being way better.
I'm going with I have no idea. Like I said, I think the matchup is Damwon favored. I probably expect a 3-1, but I'm going to predict a 3-2 just because if I want it hard enough, maybe it comes through. No, I'm not kidding. Like, honestly, this is the match I am the most excited for in everything that we've seen in Worlds thus far. I think that this is going to be, or has the potential to be, one of the greatest international best of fives that we've had in a really long time. And I just wanted to deliver, right? Like I said, obviously Khan and Dalmon winning would, to me, be preferable, but there's no losing. Just give me good games.
Yeah.
Give me a lot of them. If it's actually T1 making it, I have the utmost confidence that, be it Gen G or EDG, they will win the tournament. It's just, there's no losing. 3-2 for Dalmon. But please give me 5 games.
This is one of the hardest predictions I think I've had to do this year. We've cast a lot of finals with Damwon in them. We've seen Damwon dominate. Damwon even started the year off, or it was even, I guess, technically last year with Kespa Cup dominating, and it's one of those feelings I have, the same sort of feeling with the Hanwha series, where I go, well, it's possible T1 does this, right? Like, you can believe it. Like, if you want it hard enough, maybe it can happen. And I kind of felt similarly when I looked at the finals for summer as well. I was like, yeah, if we want T1 to win hard enough, maybe it'll be a good series. And, Mao just mentioned he wants a lot of games, wants it to be a good series. I think no matter what happens, and I hate to say this, I hate to be the downer, I think it's going to be a really bad series no matter what. If T1 wins the first game, I think there's a really good chance they actually win 3-0. But they have to win the first game. And I don't know if that's going to happen. I can't predict that. I know that sounds crazy to say, but I think whoever wins the first game will win 3-0. Tension's so high. There's so much pride on the line. There's so many things that matter. And this is basically the final. So I think whoever wins the first game will 3-0. And if I have to say who I think is going to win the first game, I think it's going to be Damwon. I have to predict them 3-0. But I also have seen Damwon crumble under pressure at MSI and some of the group stage games at MSI even. They are a team that are not invincible in terms of their mental. So, again, I see a world where if T1 smash them in game 1, like, they have like a hard game 2 and then they end up losing it, like, I could see T1 3-0ing if they win that first game. But I don't think they will, so I'm going to go with 3-0 for Damwon.
Someone on this note, before we move on to the second semi, someone... they responded to one of my tweets from 2018 where it was like, I tweeted like, watch out for the 16-year-old AD carry Gumayusi from SKT. He's going to be big one day, or something like to that note. And I'm like, this guy's, he rested his spot over even Teddy to play now in the semifinals of Worlds. Like, he has made it. A lot of the comments were like, oh, Innovation blood, like Innovation is his older brother, the StarCraft 2 player, obviously. Very famous, very successful. And it's really cool to see that he's going to be playing on a stage this big, just 3 years later. Now, I guess, 19. And he's one of the guys that I'm not really worried about in terms of like nerves.
He's so confident. Yeah, the dude is just built out of confidence. That is what he is.
Him
like,
and
that is his
Carrier
essence.
and Faker might be the ones who like carry their mental through, like,
I agree.
maybe not making it at 3-0, but again, we'll have to wait and see like how they do turn up. But it's just really cool. Just a little anecdote I wanted to add because he's here now. He's got some other new guys on the roster, like Owner specifically, and Kana from last year. And it'll be cool if they could actually outperform what seems to be the obvious favorite.
And also, the whole idea, like, we've been talking about the fact that, Khan getting his first victory before he has to go off to the military is really beautiful, and that moment is fantastic. Faker winning his 4th world championship 8 years after his first, like, that's...
Yeah.
The whole so there was a guy on Twitter who was they were
There's
trying
always a guy.
There's a guy on Twitter. Anyway,
Sounds like
I was trudging through the cesspool, right? And there was a discussion about, and it was actually quite civil, a discussion about Xiaohu and what he would need to do to start threatening for that GOAT position, right? And I responded, I was just like, if Faker didn't exist, we could have all of these discussions about greatest player of all time. But Faker is so far ahead of everybody else that conversation is dead. it's dead before it even begins. It's impossible to have. And I don't think it will be possible to have unless Damwon keep winning Worlds for the next 3 years or something like that.
But one player has to have that same consistency as well.
Well, this is the thing. So, like, it had to be like Showmaker and Canyon stay on the team forever. And we don't know whether that's going to happen or anything like that. But, like, so many ticks need to be put in boxes. And this is before potentially Faker wins it a 4th time. And at that point, like...
No, that is done.
Yeah.
If you ever have to ask the question, we're always talking about the conversation of Bonjois, which is someone who's incredibly so far ahead of everyone else, so ahead of the curve, so strong, so powerful. They sit on the throne, right, in openings. If you ever have to ask, like, is he challenging for the throne? Like, if you have to ask the question, the answer is always no. Like, that's how this works. Greatest of all time, Bonjois, these things, if you ever go, is he close to Faker's legacy? If you have to have the conversation, the answer is always no. If this person is greatest of all time, it is obvious. There's no discussion. Everybody knows. Like, that's kind of how, in my opinion, greatest of all time always works. And the fact that people are still going, well, I'm not sure. I'm like, yeah, well, then we're not there yet. But for me, the fact that they'll show a 4th star on their jersey, looking at a team jersey that has 3 stars, is already in itself, like, unbelievable. It's such a terrifying thing. Every time you look at T1, even domestically here in the LCK, when you see them walk up with the 3 stars, you know, this team has accomplished so much. You put a 4th star on that jersey. Like, I don't know if anyone will ever do that in the future of League of Legends. I mean, I don't know. I mean, can that even happen? It's just so unimaginable. It's like a reality you can't even fathom.
Yeah.
No, you're talking, like, because something similar has happened with in tennis, right? We have, like, the great 3 in Nadal, Federer, and Djokovic, that, like, the 3 of them are basically just winning everything, and they're all insane. I think, like, it might be 10, 20, 30 years before we see something. If it's not Showmaker now, like, how long is it going to take for a team to actually maintain that level of dominance like T1 has done? I don't know. Like, and is League Esports still going to be around in 20, 30 years, right? Like, because I hope it will be. I expect it will be, but we don't know.
And there are other sports as well that are team sports even, namely hockey. And there is an undisputed of all time. It's Wayne Gretzky. You guys probably know him, right? Like, even though there are the greats, there are many other names that you can put on that list, like Bobby Orr. I'm not going to get into all of them. This guy is the best, and everybody knows it. And this sport's been around for, over 100
so many
years,
sports have
right?
it, right? Like, it's
so
you got Michael Jordan, Sir Donald Bradman from cricket. Like, I want to bring it back to esports a little bit because I think the only other player in an esports organization ever that can challenge Faker for title of most successful esports player is Flash.
Yeah.
And he's not even really close, to be honest, I think, to what Faker's accomplished in terms of how many finals Faker's done domestically. The fact that he's playing a team game and still has a standout performance. He's played for way longer than Faker has in real, actual competitive leagues, because Flash, at the end of his career, like, Brood War kind of became more of a streamer league and kind of downscaled. It's not like a major league like the LCK is. And Faker is still playing, not only like winning his domestic league, which is the only league that exists, which is basically what Flash was doing before he went to the military, but he's also winning now internationally again and has done so 3 times against teams all around the world. So I think, Flash is probably the closest one, but I think he's not really close, actually, if you think about it, sadly.
It's a crazy conversation to have, but we have to talk about it after that semifinal. All right, so we have a few hours.
I want to bring up once. It's going to be a quick thing. Trust me.
We back to Wayne Gretzky.
Freak had an awesome line in the after show in Cool Down with you last night, where he said, if Faker wins 2 more world championships, he'll have 5 skins. It's kind of like,
you could play a team comp of Faker
with all Faker skins.
It's kind of ironic, isn't it? Because he never uses a skin ever.
That's the insane thing, right? It's not the team. Well, like, if Gen G would win, like, multiple world championship again, right? Like, the Subs Galaxy Gen G, like, skin line, probably, I mean, already, it wouldn't all be the same player. Because Ruler was only there for the 2nd iteration, right? Like, you can't, like, Faker actually will have 5 SKT skins, or Tier 1 skins, that all involved him.
Yeah. If it happens.
For
now it's 3. It's already a ton, but, like, it could be.
Yeah.
Could be 5.
And only 2 more world championships.
What's
2
only
more?
2. It's also kind of
so
awesome,
close.
right? Because it means that if there is 2 more. There'll actually be 6 mid lane skins as well because easier in goal one. Like, it's.
Remember when we said this was going to be the easy talk about the
yeah.
semifinals?
I mean,
a lot to talk
it's
about.
easy because it's fun, right?
Yeah.
Like,
So
there's,
much,
it's just the.
Haven't-
We're drowning in narrative, and now you are too.
Yeah,
you know?
we haven't even talked about like Coma and Faker facing off again, right? Like that's
Yeah,
Yeah.
true.
And
too
it's
much
like
to
the
get
race
into.
to the race to 4. I tweeted about this already, but the race to 4 world championships. Who is it going to be, Coma or Faker? And
too much.
we've already crowned them. Even though they will be making it to the final, and either Gen G or EDG will be there. So now let's talk about the battle of the chokers. Gen G versus EDG. I think it's fair to say it, right? Because EDG have the expectations, and I have been burnt colossally
By both.
by this team.
By both.
Yeah.
EDG was my favorite to win the whole thing. Not anymore.
Yeah.
Canceled.
I mean, EDG has been one of my favorite teams since, way back when I first learnt about them, right? Like 2014, Clear Love, FZZF, they try to make this team after leaving WE. Like, the amount of history, Deft, my favorite player, I think everyone probably knows this, but he moves to EDG with Pawn, who's also been one of my favorites for a very long time, unfortunately not playing anymore, but that EDG was so good, so dominant. They win MSI, and I was like, oh man, this team, our region is going to be amazing at Worlds. And then 2015 Worlds happened, and if you're an LPL fan, you remember that time as the time you want to forget forever because it was awful. And ever since then, I think there has been that stigma. So thankfully, like, it was RNG that brought the LPL out, I think, of what was a pretty rough time, right? They were the team that started winning first. They were also, of course, tie-in with Starhorn Royal Club that was very, very good at coming second. So always very good at making it to the very top. But EDG was just never really there. Like, Name, remember all of that hype about Name, and then he wasn't able to perform, and he was a fantastic player, just never really got off the ground. I think he won a Dade Award one year, just with how he didn't manage to really get work done. So EDG have been letting us down for quite some time, but now getting past that quarterfinal hurdle, getting up to the semifinal, and they go against Gen G.
The other team that always lets everybody down.
Oh no!
It's a match made in heaven, isn't it?
And so can I kind of want to start us off on a bit of a low note here for Gen G, because I feel like this Worlds, Gen G really has claimed the villain title.
They are 100%.
They are just the bad guy in every matchup. Like,
They are.
it's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Because the issue with Gen G is, and like I've talked about this on the broadcast a lot as well, is that their own fans are scared to believe in them because they've been burned so many times, right? And at the same time, unlike a lot of other teams where it's very long down and then like one spike, Gen G overall consistently is a great team. These players are really good. They're one of the key gatekeepers of the LCK. We see clearly also good enough to gatekeep other regions out of groups or quarters. But do you really trust them? Do you? Even I this year got burned.
But do you
when
even
I was like
it's just so hard because it's like, I think that the most beautiful final that we could get is probably like for rich narrative would be EDG versus T1, right?
Yeah.
I think that is like 2015 MSI rematch, and like, oh my god, the history, wow, like it's so cool. But like, it means that once again, Gen G, just the bad guys, watch them win. It will happen.
Legit, watch this happen. Well, like if there's two timeless. If Dalmon win, Gen G is like no. Like our power to play spoiler is not strong enough to our power to crush our own dreams, so they lose. But if T1 actually somehow gets the upset against Dalmon, right? They get the 3-0 sweep, they win that first game, and then it's T1 in the finals. Everyone's like, oh come on, ADG, you can make it, and then Gen G 3-0 them. And then
they beat T1.
Yeah, oh, that's even more. Like that's the beauty.
Remember the spring semifinals?
That's the enigma, right? That is Gen G, where you can simultaneously see them somehow win worlds now. I guess like that can happen, even though it's not likely. But also just get 3-0'd by EDG, because EDG does a lot of the same things that they do, but just objectively better.
Yeah.
Before the tournament, right, there was the joke about getting, I don't know who else it was, but I know it was Rogue, EDG, and Genji in the same group somehow. So we could just like
so we could have a group last for 6 years.
Let's see who beats themselves first, shall we? And I do think that EDG have conquered a lot of their own demons in actually getting to semis in the first place. I think that head to head, I would give them the edge over Genji if I look at individual matchups. Although even there it's kind of arguable. I feel like the main thing is that regardless of who's better on the day between Scout and BDD, we're not going to see what we saw happen to Perks. Like, I think both these two players are too good, right? Like, Genji's not going to be able to just steamroll every single lane and win off that. And I don't see EDG doing that because that's not really the type of team they are, and also Genji's too good for that. So that does actually create a really interesting scenario. Both these teams' mid game is kind of, I don't want to say bad, but it's just very inconsistent. Like, kind of like, do you know what's happening?
I think
do you know what's happening?
They have a mid game where you know that it's safe to take a bathroom break. That's what they have. They've got the bathroom break.
If the Drake has been taken, Drake means break. You just go off, just go off, grab a coffee, grab a snack.
I thought that the world's like catchphrase was make or break, not Drake means break.
It is though.
I really enjoyed watching the two completely different, almost black and white different styles between RNG and EDG.
Yeah.
Because RNG, terrible macro, like decision making, teleport timings, when to fight for objectives, all wrong. Way better at team fighting. EDG, very bad at team fighting. Don't fight that. What are you doing? Where's your positioning at? But in the early game,
can you
they
be
will
bad
macro
at team fighting if you just decide not to do it?
And if you have fight,
you know,
right?
So
like,
I think that I personally thought Flandre's laning was very bad, but his teleport timings and his ability to play weak side was often good. And I think that if you compare Genji's style to EDG's style, and both teams are a little bit slow to the mid to late game, eventually BDD will have that awesome scatter of the week that sets up a team fight where Ruler kills people. And also EDG is not a team that likes to capitalize on positional errors as much as RNG would, for example, or T1 or Dom1 would, or even Mad Lions would. So like, yeah, Ruler might get away with just being out in the middle of nowhere because EDG might be a little bit too scared to punish him. And I think when it comes down to how this series is going to go, I think it's going to be a lot of like 35 to 45 minute games. And I think it's going to be a lot of waiting. Oh, BDD clutched it, and Genji win. And I think that for me, based on what I've seen from EDG so far, like if you asked me this question a few weeks ago, I'd be like, oh yeah, like Genji, no chance. But now I'm starting to feel like Genji wins this slow, painful waiting game almost all the time.
I have so many thoughts about this series, actually, because in terms of, what we talked about before, in terms of their opponents in the quarterfinals, right? Like, Genji did look really strong. They crushed their lanes. But importantly, as Chronicler said, a lot of how they won their games in the quarterfinals, it's probably not going to happen against CDG,
it was
right?
just Klid. Like, that was bad play, but Klid salvaged it somehow.
Klid was an absolute god.
Yeah. He was insane. But he got Lee Sin, every game?
Every game,
right? So, like, here's the other thing. That. So, like, on one side, I'm like, okay, EDG had to go up against RNG. And a lot of people were predicting RNG to win as well. And they said it's really close. Of course, it's an LPL best of 5, so it goes 5 games. And it could have been RNG if it was their day and they won. It was an incredibly tough match. And LPL teams are definitely known for sometimes throwing caution to the wind and kind of just, like, going crazy, taking fights that they don't have to. It's like the opposite of the LCK, which is a little bit more controlled, but can sometimes be a little bit too passive. So it's like pros and cons, right? But like, I'm wondering if we get into this best of 5 and like looking at the matchups that they had, on paper you would say, well, EDG had to go through RNG, so this seems like they should be favored in this matchup. And on one side, though, you're thinking, they're probably just going to give Klid Lee Sin like 3 times in a row again, because I feel like they're also sometimes a little bit not cautious enough in draft as well, where it's like, okay, you can just do whatever you want. You can take Lee Sin, or you can take one pick. Maybe they'll give BDD like Syndra every game, or Azir every game, or something like this. So on one hand, I'm like, EDG should be the favorites, but then I'm like, yeah, but Genji are becoming the villains, and BDD looks like he just doesn't give anymore. He's like, Perks is the worst mid laner like of all time.
Oh my! We'd have to
and
talk
the Gen
about
G
some of that trash talk.
and the Gen G
crap.
Twitter.
Yeah, man.
The comfort zone is the airplane. That was like the best trash talk I saw all year. And BDD's like on it, and he's super overconfident, and he gets to play like whatever he wants. You try to ban away his Azir and his Syndra and everything. I'll play Aatrox and Dumpster Perks anyway. I'll carry my team. Like, so on one page, I'm like, I don't know, like, who's gonna win? Is it gonna be the villain in Gen G and the crazy trash talk, and BDD like and maybe Clid on Lee Sin like really reaching super pinnacle form at the right moment, or is it EDG who on paper should probably be the favorites, especially defeating RNG in the best of 5? Like, I don't know.
I personally,
I don't know.
I said this yesterday on Twitter, and I will say it again. I think BDD needs to be in the 2022 World Song. Like, it needs to happen. His performance this Worlds has just been so clutch. And as you've pointed out several times, like, he often leads you to believe he can be clutch, but then he will actually be the least clutch, actually, when it matters. Mm-hmm. But this time he's been just clutch, like, from day one to where we are now. So I'm like, this guy should be getting a lot more respect and hype, I think, than he's currently getting.
I actually think BDD being overconfident is great, because the one thing that is very common in every Gen G collapse is BDD is invisible, right? Yeah. And if BDD just believes enough that he can stomp whoever is in front of him, then I actually think that's really good for Gen G. I do think that when it comes to like stylistic matchups, that RNG I think would have been highly favored in my opinion against Gen G.
Yes.
And I think
RNG smashes Gen G. This is far closer, I think.
Yeah, I think we collectively agree. But because of the similarities to an LCK team that EEG has, where they're a lot more we're a lot slower, they're happier to opt into team fights, and a bit more of a controlled style where it's more about trying to get Viper and Mako not necessarily like ahead in lane, but in a comfortable position so that when you get to those fights, you can consistently carry. And I don't know. It feels to me like Gen G have kind of departed from that style, because previously to the tournament, I would expect that to be the case, where we see something similar, where both teams try to play kind of slow, and then I think EDG will do it better. I think that Viper, especially previously to the tournament, looks a lot better than Ruler, right? I think that EDG as a whole looks a lot stronger, but with current form Gen G, it's really hard, but I've been fooled by Gen G and their momentum at Spring Finals, and that's really that's what gets you, right? Where you're like, but I've seen these same things before. But then again, I'm sure every EDG fan is also like, no.
Well, this is the thing, like, both of them can't disappoint. You know, one of them has to make someone happy. You know, that's sort of how it works with the fact that one team has to win. I guess maybe if they cancel the semi-final. Like, that's the only way that it could possibly happen. But I don't think that's what's going to be the outcome. Like, it's crazy, and I think that I'm with you, Mal. Like, I almost don't want to predict an outcome of this series, just because as soon as I do, then I will have an expectation, and as soon as you have an expectation
for either team.
Well, like, this is the thing. Like, I don't even know what I want, because like, yes, as an LCK commentator, I'm like, I should want Gen G to win. But as a League of Legends fan, I want EDG, one of the most storied organizations ever, to make it finally to a world final. Yeah. After, like, the opening MSI ever, 2015. They come in, they get that amazing 5th game Morgana counter pick and beat Faker for the very first time on LeBlanc. Like, that was like the most amazing moment. And we saw nothing of them until now.
And it's also like, think about how good 2015 SKT was peak SKT.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they were so insane.
That is the blemish. That is the blemish right there. You know, you've got like Samsung White and Blue being so good in 2014, definitely a bit of an issue there for SKT that did have a struggling year that time. I don't even think it was necessarily struggling. It's just that Korean teams were just ridiculous in 2014. 2015 comes around, and like, that was when you were going to see SKT just conquer the world. And EDG winning that MSI must still irk you.
It's
you
honestly
know?
the same as what RNG did to Damwon this year. Like,
that MSI,
How different? Like, I think it was good for Damwon that they lost, because I think they wouldn't look like they did today if they had won MSI. But like, as Damwon as well, like, imagine if you win summer 2020, Worlds, Spring, Summer, and then Worlds again, and there's just one game.
Yeah, the little blip.
The one don't get and yeah, I agree. It's so hard. Like for very different reasons than the previous one, where you're like, oh, everything's amazing, everything is cool. I don't know.
Now that I think about it, I do want EDG to win, which means Genji's gonna win. Like Genji's 100% winning because they're the bad guys. Like it comes back to the Mighty Ducks reference, right? They're the Icelandic team. Mm-hmm. They're too good.
They're in Iceland as well.
Yeah, and we're in like
perfect.
We've got to figure out which act we're in, but I think a semifinal doesn't sound like the final act of the movie, right? Which is where Iceland falls. I don't know. It's a roughie. And we're in Iceland as well, which makes it even more poignant.
I am kind of happy to see Genji lean into their villain role of like, well, people clearly don't really like us or appreciate as much as we would. Like BDD, you already pointed out, I think very justifiably, getting a lot more love this game or this World Championship, because even if he's disappointed at key moments, like he's also been the best, one of the best, right? LCK Midlands for like 3 years now? 4?
Oh, many. Yeah, since 2017.
2017 Longzhu, right? Yeah. So 4 years.
Yeah.
And people always talk about Chovy, people always talk about Faker and Showmaker, and those guys deserve the praise, but I'm just happy to see BDD do well. I just love that they're just like, okay, well, I'm still not getting any appreciation. It's time for trash talk. If people consider us the villains, let's do it. Arnold's tweeting about like flight choices. It's like, yeah, this is a really hard decision in the third game for C9, and it's just like, is it normal or is it business class? Like, and they do it.
I think it's absolutely fantastic as well. Like one of the good things about Genji winning anything is that the organization in general, like you just like outlined, is just they're fun. You know, they've got a social media team that's actually doing stuff,
and they're really good.
And of course they're really good. But the reason why they're the villains is because they do, like you were saying, let you down at those times. But if they don't and they win, we can be happy about that as well, because that means they haven't let us down, and now we get world champions.
We can trust. Finally.
We can trust again, and it's theoretically as well. Like that's a third trophy in the Samsung case theoretically, right? Like. They've been under different names, so it's a little bit more, difficult to see it as the third time. But third time world champions only happened by one other team. So being able to do it and potentially doing it up against SKT for that 2017-2016 rematch, like,
if and like also like BDD getting a world championship would be amazing. Like it would actually be one of the biggest underdog stories that we've seen for Worlds in years.
And also like the sneak attack. GG? It's the full sneak attack as well, right? Like, and I think that we have done our due diligence as LCK casters to not lean on Genji at all. We've just let them go this entire time, and I think that we've been doing the right thing.
Just do your thing, no pressure.
Yeah, I've also said that I want EDG to win, so tick. There we go. You're welcome.
And you really mean it as well. Yeah. And like it would be. I
think that like. Right now we're spoiled for choice. There's just like there's 4 like amazing organizations moving towards the final. So I think that we're fine with whatever. But the EDG matchups are just it's exciting.
Are we gonna do some official preds? Are we doing it?
I'm ready to. This one hurts. This one hurts.
I don't know, man.
I knew everyone was gonna get a little nervous about
ready.
this one.
I'm ready. This might be reminiscent of spring finals, but it's Frio Genji. They're gonna do it. They're gonna do it. BDD didn't let me down. Come on. BDD didn't let me down. EDG historically have had a really rough time in high pressure situations. The fact that it's the same for Genji, that's not gonna hold me back.
Who's gonna out choke the other, and you think it's gonna be EDG?
Yeah, like honestly, like. This is obviously somewhat in jest, but also you can predict any scoreline here, and it can make complete sense and no sense at all.
Yeah, I think you can either explain any prediction, and also it's impossible to explain any prediction. Like that's the thing that's hilarious about it.
I have no idea.
I'm
gonna stick with it.
I'll tell you guys what I want to see is I want to see whichever team wins play way better than they did in their quarter match. Like that's what I want, so that we get the best final. Because as everyone's already predicted, we've talked to death about like seems like this team is winning to lose, and I hope that they can improve over the course of this break before those semis and then the finals. And I think about this like series in general. I think about there's a lot of matchups of players who in their region don't get enough credit. Like when you think about BDD compared to all the mid laners that get all the credit, think about Scout in the LPL, the other mid laners that get more credit than he does, like Dwayne who really underperformed in this tournament.
Dade would.
And then Viper in Ruler is a really cool matchup because like Ruler wins Worlds, gets a lot of hype, and then Griffin soars and takes off suddenly, and like Ruler's domestic appearances hasn't picked up his title yet. There's a lot of really cool matchups to look at. Even looking at like Rascal versus Flandre feels like there's a lot of stories there in terms of where they sit in the top lane in both regions. But for the reasons I mentioned earlier about how I think the slow pace of the mid to late game is going to go, I do think it really favors Gen G. And I do think that Gen G would have gotten bopped by RNG just because of those stylistic hesitations. I struggle to say 3-0 Gen G, but I will give Gen G the nod with 3-1. I think they'll probably... One of those games they mess up, like they did against Cloud9, they won't come back and win. I think that they will drop a game to EDG, but I think they will win at 3-1.
I think it's a 3-2 ED Gen G.
Good.
Thanks, Max.
Nailed it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I guess I'll do a real one. I think that I agree with Wolf. I think that RNG would have been pretty clearly RNG favored. This is just a disaster, as I spoke about before. If Gen G keep playing the way they are, especially because of the power of mid jungle at the moment is so high, the Krug Bros are just going to do it, right? Because if Clid and BDD play as well as they were, there's just no getting past them. I don't think that the synergy's there on EDG, and I think the bottom lane is honestly just been kind of irrelevant throughout this whole tournament. Like, when you see Jins getting picked and it works, that's when you know there's no agency in the bottom lane whatsoever. Outside of some supports getting some roaming done. But with the amount of enchanters, and Life is an enchanter support player, but Mako has historically been engage for his entire career. He can play the enchanters, and we did see that, but it just wasn't really his thing. Like, I think that EDG will still probably go towards a style like that, and I think that Gen G, if they continue their form, will just win, and we'll have the villains make it all the way to the end, and can they then become the heroes
3-2
by winning again? It's definitely a 3-2, and it's gonna last 16 hours or something like that. Like, every game is gonna be straight down.
I heard you guys were bored with those 3-0s. What if I gave you the most close long series ever?
It's gonna be like one team being behind, and then the actual game state won't matter because by like one team gets an early Drake, then falls behind for 4 Drakes. And then it's an Elder fight.
A lot of Elder fight deciders, for sure.
Oh, yeah, we're 5 flipping. We're 5 flipping.
We could have 5 Elders this series, absolutely.
Gen G did a lot of flipping in their match against Cloud9.
It was not good.
People love to point that out, and they were exactly right because...
I loved what Chronicle said. He's like, game 1, I mean, anyone wins that game. Like,
if only Blabber could have hit those smites, you know?
But I think that like it'll be all of these game 1s. I think it'll be like 5 game 1s, and it's like, well, who's the better team? I don't know.
Well, neither team is like good enough to actually set up an objective like teams like Dalmon or T1 do. So they're just like, we're just gonna flip it. Have fun. Good luck, Clint.
I feel like Gen G would just like, we just want to, though. Like, I feel like they were better than that, but they're like, no, I think the best plan of action is to flip a coin and hope that we win. This is a calculated risk.
They're like
50-50.
You guys know No Country for Old Men?
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, God, yeah.
You know the scene where he goes into those, like, roadside convenience stores, like, flip a coin, you know? That was kind of like Gen G. In those games.
We need that meme made.
But it fits because I think that Gen G, like, to give my prediction, I think it will be 3-2 Gen G. And there's a couple of different things. Like, I think that Rascal, he had a really underwhelming performance against Cloud9. But I think that he can have high highs, and generally he doesn't slump for too long. They might have some issues in the draft in terms of like trying to force comfort picks for him. So that is one thing that I am worried about. And I think that EDG can absolutely find holes in that armor and find holes in the draft to get wins in that way. But it just feels like the villains are really powering up, that they really want it. There's like so much positive, but also like evil energy behind this team right now.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good.
To the point where I think they will win. And the 3-2 is I think that EDG are just a really good team. They're a really good team. I don't think they're going to choke super hard. I don't think it's going to be like a 3-0 or anything like that. And I think that BDD and Ruler, like BDD is really coming into his own, and Ruler, he's back here on the world stage. I think he's just going to outperform the other side, and they're just going to get the win. It's so hard to say because, I can say all these things, and maybe EDG gets a 3-0 because Gen G flips a bunch, and,
the beauty of it is it also just, like right now, where we sit, doesn't matter.
No.
The final's going to be great. We get to watch Damwon versus T1. I'm jealous of you guys because you get to do it in a couple of hours, and we have to wait a few days, which is a little bit frustrating. But man, it's just everybody wins. It's absolutely fantastic. I want to bring up actually on the point of BDD, we need to shout out our old mate Monte Cristo because he tweeted some stats about BDD and what he does with resources, and I thought it was really interesting having a look at it because he takes like almost the least gold out of any mid laner at Worlds, but as far as damage percentage and damage share, he's like second, and that just shows how good he has been. And I think that stat has only improved since that Zoe game where things went awfully in the laning phase, but he's still BDD Zoe.
And I feel like some of this like evil energy that we're feeling from BDD is him taking the step to not just like go even in a lane and like just survive, go even through the lane and like be okay for the later stage. He's actively trying to dump on his opponents. And he's doing it well. So like he's giving himself confidence, and he's trying really hard to like do that extra damage and be the playmaker. And maybe this is like
it's like he's
the
it's
Super
the
Saiyan moments,
of
the evolution of BDD here in this world.
Yeah, is it Super Saiyan or is it like getting his mojo back? I'm feeling like some Austin Powers vibes, like he's made it through the spy who shagged me, and now he's got the mojo from the moon or wherever it was. I think that's getting into the realm of speculation, and this episode is already I think we've been filming it for like 16 hours or something like that, but it's been extraordinarily fun. I do not regret any of it. Thank you so much for watching, ladies and gentlemen, and enjoy the semi-finals, and we'll be back with more Pog State next year. Thank you so much for watching throughout. We really, really appreciate it. If you could give us some likes and stuff like that, we'll work on getting that Doritos sponsorship for next year.
Mountain Dew as well,
and Mountain Dew, like anything.
And
we just
pizza.
want to get some sort of sponsorship, and if we do, that bathroom episode
waffles.
is coming because you deserve it. Okay. Once again, we apologize. I almost tried to put just a toilet in the corner over there, but it just didn't work out. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and we'll see you next year for more Pog State.
Can you say bye to your individual camera?
Bye, camera.
Bye, camera.
Bye.